Hello, I am Bree. I am the history half of Pontifex, and this is part 3 of our AMA leading up to our anniversary special. So we're going to jump in right into the heavy and super blasphemous stuff right here and prepare for some language in this first question because Courtney from the Cult of Domesticity asked us, fuck, Mary Kill, Pope edition is so blasphemous, and but it's an AMA, so we're gonna answer it. I had fun trying to think of how exactly I would answer this. So for the first one, Calixtus, he seems kind of feisty. For Mary, Hormistus seems like he was a good husband and a good father, and he waited to join the church until he was widowed. He didn't like. We also have other popes who were married and seemed to be good family men, but then they wanted their wife to join a nunnery, kind of like Agatho. So I'm gonna go with Hormistus. He seems like he was a goodly husbandman. And then for kill, I'm going to go with either Scumbag Stephen the First, Zosimus, or Sabinian, but Gregory has me covered on Sabinian, so I think either Zosimus or Scumbag Steve. Courtney also asked, what are the best papal palaces? Because there are many. We have the St. John the Lateran, we have the Vatican Apartments, we have Castel Gandolfo, we have the palace in Viterbo, we have the Palace of the Popes in Avignon, and that's not even all of them. So there have been plenty of places that have been papal residences. So I think it would be pretty hard to beat the Apostolic Palace in the Vatican just because you'd be surrounded by the incredible history and how cool is it that you can just like pop over to the museum. That's like one of my favorite places. So there's that. But in terms of like exterior appearance and being in a beautiful places, the Palazzo dei Papi in Viterbo is gorgeous. I know that the Palace of the Popes in Avignon is very famous, but it's not that pretty, so I didn't pick that one. Podcast on Germany asked, what was the worst time politically for the papacy and why? And was there a point of near extinction? The entire early history of the church is definitely it being under threat of extinction. I think you could argue that there were low points throughout the rest of papal history where papal authority becomes threatened or there becomes less power associated with the role, as we're going to see, but there is no time as low as when the church itself was viewed as a cult and it was completely illegal to martyr all of the popes. That's not a good time, and that's the closest they come to being wiped out. In terms of worst time politically, there's a lot of argument for the Secularum Obscurum, which is the first half of the 10th century, where the entire papacy becomes under the influence of one political family, the Theophylacti. So you could argue that there's that, but it's a low point for prestige, and influence, and reputation. But then again, so is the Avignon papacy. So I think you can only really make the strongest argument for the beginning of the church as the lowest point, even though that's kind of an easy answer. Rugir K asked, who in history or the present never became pope but should have become pope? And even though I got to thinking about this question a little bit, and the first thing that came to mind is somebody who absolutely should not have been pope, and I would not have wanted to see as pope, but could you imagine a Savonarola papacy? That can't be my answer because it would be awful, but I think it's a really interesting thought experiment, and it led me down a total rabbit hole. In terms of who I would actually like to see become Pope, I'm going to go right to the modern day because I'm a really, really big fan of Cardinal Konrad Krajewski. I probably butchered that, but he's a cardinal in the Vatican. He's known as the Pope's Robin Hood, and this guy, the stories that keep coming out about this cardinal, he is the apple does not fall far from the tree from Francis with him. He is full of love and compassion, and he gives aid and support without judgment. There's a lot of news stories out about him recently that definitely express exactly that viewpoint. And he even personally went down a manhole to restore power to a building where a bunch of homeless people were living because it had been shut off to try and drive them out. But he was, trying to provide them with some modicum of dignity and living. And I think that's really beautiful. Also, his papal assistant, not papal assistant, cardinal assistant, his assistant of this cardinal is a reformed criminal that was living on the streets until the cardinal gave him like a second chance at life. And I think that that's really amazing. It got him off the street, got him working, and there are also articles about him where he talks about how this cardinal gave him a second chance at life, and it's really beautiful. So I'd like to see him become pope someday, but not too soon because I really like Francis. And in terms of historically, I think maybe a papacy of Cardinal Caesar Baronius would be interesting because he's one of our greatest sources for history at the time. So if we had a pope who was doing history, recording history, it might be particularly interesting. And people who generally record history have a lot of reflection about history in the past. So maybe he would have used his historical bend to have a unique kind of papacy. I think that could be cool. So, yeah, this is part 3. Join us again tomorrow, and I will have more answers to more questions.